Hey guys, I'm super excited for this lesson. I chose my lesson plan from chapter 3. And the reason I just really like this one is I really like this idea of a lesson. I think it's a great introductory to really anything. I think this could be used for any content. I think any grade level could use it. And I just think it's a really good way for students to start making connections. So like I said, I chose chapter 3. The standard I picked was on DNA, so construct an explanation for how the structure of DNA is replicated and how DNA and RNA code for the structure of proteins which regulate and carry out the essential functions of life and result in specific traits. So I'm focusing on 8th grade, and I'm hoping this lesson will take about 55 to 60 minutes. And again, this depends on questions and transitions, so I'm not sure if it will actually take that long or if longer. This is just my good guesstimate. The objective I'm focusing on is that students will be able to state the definitions for genetic or DNA vocabulary words. And this part of the question could be replaced with vocabulary words if you want to. I just kind of put a generic thing there for now because as I'm not actually teaching this lesson, I'm not sure exactly which words I'd want to use. So I'm just putting a generic DNA genetic words. So basically the objective is just for them to state definitions. The essential question is, what is the definition for those words, like the DNA words, and how can these definitions help you make connections in later parts of the lessons? So essentially, I'm, again, wanting students to know these definitions and know how they're going to help them make connections later on. Materials for this lesson are paper and pencil, some sort of projector, and then either a PowerPoint or a transparent sheet. That would probably be for an older projector, so it really depends on what projector you have. I think PowerPoint would work great, and I'll explain later on kind of that reasoning. But yeah, not a super material involved lesson. It's a lot of group work, it's a lot of just talking things through and mainly having fun. I think this lesson, the reason I really liked it is because it involves just kind of being goofy but getting to the point of something. So jumping from there to the beginning of the lesson. So the beginning of this lesson, again, like I said, I'm using this as an introductory lesson. So an introduction to a unit, and that's why I said it could really be used for anything because it's focusing on vocabulary words. So at this point, knowing that my essential question and objective revolve around DNA, this unit is on, DNA. So at this point, I'm just assuming my students know nothing about DNA. They may have heard it before, but I'm not assuming they know the definition, they know what it is. It would be very impressive if they did, but I'm just assuming they don't. So I'm going to give a brief intro of DNA, like base level. Here's the name. And then students at this point, we're going to do a whole class activity. So everybody's involved. And I'm going to go around the room and have them name a living thing. They can name their parents, they can name their dog, they can name their fish, they can name their sister themselves, their favorite plant. I just want them to start thinking about living things and why we'd be doing this in DNA. Because the rationale behind this part of the lesson is that connection. Why are we talking about DNA and why are we talking about living things? Because I feel like if you've never been introduced to DNA before, a lot of the times when you hear it, it's connected with humans. And I don't know if that was just me as a student, and that's an assumption I'm making again, but I just think a lot of times it's associated with humans and not necessarily all living things. And so I want students to say DNA is not just a human thing, it's all living things. So even though I don't look the same as a plant, we both still have some sort of DNA because we're living. So this part of the lesson is really this connection building and getting them thinking, because again, they know nothing. So I just want them to start making those connections that they'll later build off of when they learn these vocabulary words and are actually learning the content. So that's the introductory part. I did put a note about English language learners. I know it can be hard for them to speak in front of people sometimes. So if that's something that they're not comfortable doing, if they even want to draw like a small picture and go last and show that, if you want to tell them earlier, like, hey, if you have a pet or something, or you want to bring a picture of your family, you can show that. So something kind of for them to connect to their life, but not necessarily they have to speak or say a word. And I know it's just one word, so it shouldn't be too bad, but if they really were that uncomfortable and wanted to show a picture instead, I wanted to provide that option just in case. And I'm hoping that this takes about 10 minutes. Going around the classroom, each saying one word, really shouldn't take too long, depending on their rowdiness for the day. So that's the introductory. So really, really introductory, just connection making. And I know I said that word a lot, so I apologize. Next, moving on to middle. So the first part of middle is modeling. So the modeling, I really want to just use this to introduce the lesson. So the students in this part of the lesson are just listening. There will be an opportunity for them to ask questions. So now I'm introducing the activity to them, and I'm going to introduce it to you guys right now. So essentially what I'm going to have students do is they will break into groups. I'm thinking 3 to 4 students. I'm going to give them a vocabulary word, a science word. So we're going to say protein. We're going to sound it out together, even though I've already said it, but we're all going to say it, sound it out if students need us to, and we're going to spell it. And they're going to write this spelling down on a paper. And then as a group on a separate sheet of paper where they don't have the word, they're going to write down a definition as a group. So this part is just group work. They're going to come up with a definition. It can be something silly if they want. It can be serious. I'm hoping a little more serious, but if they really don't know and they just need to write something silly, they can do that. And then we're going to hand all the definitions in, and then I will read them out loud, and then the class will vote on which one they like the best. You can make this a game. I just decided it's just fun to do the voting, and I would figure out game-wise when I actually did this lesson, but at this point, it would just be handing it in, and then the winner would just get a pat on the back at this point. But yeah, so they would hand those in, and then as a class, I validate those and say, hey, these are great thinking. If someone was along the track, I would kind of point those out. If somebody got it on point, then I'd be like, great, but I'm not expecting that. So I'll kind of point out if things were what was way off, what was closer, and then as a class, we'll talk about the actual definition. So students have started thinking about it. They kind of are making those funny things, and then if they want to connect their real one to the fake one that they made, they can do that. So it's just to start getting them thinking and seeing that this isn't, oh, I have to know this definition. It's so serious, but hey, this is just a good building block, and I want you guys to know this, and this is really going to help you in the future, but don't take it too seriously, because I feel like sometimes when vocabulary is just like, here it is, know it, that it gets really hard for them to remember. So I'm hoping this lesson creates this fun atmosphere of, hey, yeah, I remember that word because of this, or hey, I remember because of this activity. So this is my main goal of it, is to really just, again, connections, get them to be in a fun atmosphere of remembering it. So again, at this point in the lesson, students are just listening to me, and I just explain that to them. And if students with, behavioral issues, if you want to explain this to them before, if you want to have a written form of the instructions to hand to them so they have this throughout the lesson, this can be to any student who with a learning disability or modification you feel might need it, have the written form ready on hand. And then after you've explained the instructions of the activity, have students ask questions, because I feel like creating a safe environment where they feel like they can ask questions and the time to allow them to ask questions helps. So later on when you're actually in the activity, it's not like, hey, what's going on? I don't know how to do this, and wasting more time there. And hopefully as they're also in this whole class group, then I don't have to take the time to, hey, everybody stop what you're doing and listen to me, but we're already all together. And if somebody asks a question that maybe I missed a whole part of the activity and it's way confusing for everybody, so now I get to go back and say, okay, my fault, here's what I need to explain better. Or if it's just something that wasn't super clear to begin with, then I can explain it to everybody. So even if half the class already knows, the other class now knows. So we're all on the same page, and we're all going to start hopefully closer on the same page when the activity is going. So introducing the activity, allowing them to ask questions. I'm thinking 5 to 10 minutes. I don't think it's going to take too long for me to explain the activity. And then again, if I explain it well enough, I hope there's not too many questions, but I want to allow for questions here so I don't have to later. I'll always accept questions, but this is my big time for questions. So 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how fast I am, and how many questions students have. All right, next part, guided practice. So this is where we're gonna split into groups. This one I don't think I actually specified if I was going to put students in groups or not. I just specified about students with like, again, learning disabilities or any modifications they may need. I'm either, if I have them choose a group or I choose a group, I will be putting those students together with another student who I know will help them, or be in a group that will be best for their learning. I think at this point, if we're already at chapter 3, I know my students, and I'm hoping I will be able to put students who need help with another student who will be able to help them best. I feel like group work a lot of times with those students, if they're just kind of lollygagging with their friends or doing whatever, then they're not going to learn to their best ability. And again, this is a funner activity, so I'm not super concerned, but again, making those connections and learning those vocabs creates this base level for the content, so I do want them to still be paying attention and learning from it, especially if they're English language learners. This is a really big lesson for them. So they'll break into their groups, and then we're going to demonstrate the activity. So at this point, we're not going to use a science word. We're just going to demonstrate. You can use a silly word like blanket or pillow or TV, something. So you'll have them, we'll say it together, we'll spell it, and then as a group, they'll come up with a definition. Seeing their level of comfort and engagement with it. If you want to do a second fun word, you can. Or if you just want to do one and move on. I was thinking 1 or 2. I wouldn't do probably more than 2 just for time's sake. So again, this allows students to practice. It allows them to get comfortable with their group, get comfortable with the activity, and then we can move on. So this is just, so they're going to be doing the activity, but not with the words yet. So it's not super important yet. They're just learning the steps. It's kind of like in Mario Kart or Mario Party where you like do the practice game first. Sorry, side note, but that's just what that made me think of. Sorry. Okay. So now we're into the actual independent practice or scaffolding part of the lesson. And for that last part, I'm thinking about 10 minutes for that. Like I said, I don't want to take longer than 1 to 2 words, so that's why I'm thinking about 10 minutes. And then we'll move on to the next activity, and this is where I'm allowing for the most time, about 25 minutes. I'm not choosing a lot of words. I think I put about, 8 words total on my list. I don't know if I'd actually use those all. It really depends on how many you want to do, and again, time-wise. But now they're in their groups, they practice it, they know how to do this. So now I'm going to put up the words, and I'm going to give groups about 2 to 3 minutes to come up with a definition. The words I've put in my lesson plan were DNA, replication, translation, amino acid, mRNA, tRNA, ribosome, and protein. Some of those, I just was finding words, thinking of ones I know, but now that I'm reflecting on it, those might be too hard for middle school, like mRNA, tRNA. I don't know if we'd get into that depth, but anyway, those kind of words would be what we would use. So we talk about them, say them, write them, and now in their groups, they get 2 to 3 minutes to come up with a definition. Once they finish the definition, they'll pass it on up. We'll go through them as a class, and then we'll say the real definition together. If at this point students want to be writing the definitions, I encourage that. I really want them to, have this as their notes. So they should at least be writing the words, and then I would encourage them to write the real definitions for their notes. I'm not making this an assignment, but note-wise, they should have the definitions down somewhere. So the rationale behind this part of the lesson is obviously giving them the opportunity to think through each definition for the word, what it might be, so they get to start critically thinking before I actually give it to them. And then they're going to give an opportunity to have notes. So now they'll have these notes, they'll have a reference point of the vocabulary words, they get to talk them through their group, then we get to talk through them as a class. So yes, they're kind of, again, learning these definitions in a fun way, but also getting to the point. I want to make sure. Yeah. So by the end, they should have a full list of the vocabulary words. I think I would really encourage my students, or make it mandatory, they write the definitions. And again, not because I want them to be an assignment, but I do want it to be a note, because this is the building block, the introductory, so they need to be able to go back to this. And then this is where the PowerPoint, the transparency slides would come in. This is where you can just put up the definitions on the board, so you don't have to go up and write them all. So the definitions will be on the board, and then if you want to allow another minute or 2 for them to write it down, that would be best. So that's the activity part. And again, about those 8 vocabulary words, just because I feel like more than that would get a little overwhelming. If you want to throw a fun word in between them, if you see them kind of losing engagement, then throw a fun word in and kind of mix it up for a second before you go back to the science words, the words I probably never seen before and are having a hard time coming up with definitions. All right. After the activity, now we're to the end. So I would say about 10-15 minutes for this, for the ending activity. So you're going to take the vocabulary words off the board. If you want to give them some time between the activity and this to go back through their vocabulary words, review them. Now you're going to give them a quiz, exit ticket. You're going to have them list 4 words, any 4 words they want, and they're going to need to write the definition. So this is where it becomes important for that critical thinking and not memorization, but that recall of those definitions. So students will, and you can say this throughout the lesson, if you want to tell them like, hey, at the end, you're going to need 4 of these, so just pay attention to 4 or 3, however you want to choose. I did 4. I felt that was a good number. So their exit ticket is they need to have 4 words and a definition written for those. And the definition does need to be close to the real definition of those words. So again, that recall, for English language learners, I said you could have them tell it to you if you want to have them do like only 1 to 2 words. Or students with lower reading abilities. It depends on them, on the student again, but I was just thinking maybe not have them do 4, but if they could just do 2, that would be amazing. Or if they want to talk it through with you, that would also be an option. The rationale for this is this allows you to see their recall. What did they understand from the vocabulary, and what words would be best to go back through. If you noticed, hey, this word wasn't done by any student, I probably need to go back through this vocabulary word. If you see that, oh, all the students wrote this word and did amazing with recalling the definition, then you're probably good to go with that vocabulary word. So it really helps you see and gauge where they're at with each vocabulary word. Because again, as this is like a building block for this unit specifically, I think it will be best if you go through and kind of find which words students are struggling with, and they're having an easier time with, and it allows you to do this without just doing some random vocab quiz that you do in like 2nd grade. I guess it's a spelling quiz, but anyway, sorry, sidetracked again. But yeah, so this allows you to really just understand where the students are at after this lesson, and maybe what vocab words you need to kind of keep bringing back up again, and not that you need to do this entire lesson again, but hey, when this word comes up, you kind of have them recall, hey, again, we've learned this word, what does this mean? So that's my lesson plan. I hope that as going through that made sense. I hope that this is an activity that you guys would love using in your classroom. Again, I was really excited about this one because I just think sometimes vocabulary can be monotonous and just going through the motions. And so I think this was a great activity to just allow them to kind of have fun with it, but get the point and get the definitions down. And then again, it allows you to see where your students are starting at. And then you can kind of move forward from there, from your lesson, like what are focal points now that I'm in this unit that I'm really going to need to help students with. So hope you enjoyed this, and good luck with your lessons.